Hello, I'm Brian Fox. Welcome to my channel, I Hate Rock Music. And I'm going to do a whole bunch of videos this week, so let's get rolling here. So this video is going to be about the band called Holy Moses. And I remember passing on this record quite a few times over the years. Every time I seemed to check it out, it really wasn't what I was looking for. But the last 10 years or so, I gave it another chance, and I'm really glad I did. And I'm even more interested now that I found out more about the band. So let's get into the band a little bit. Came out of Woodstock, New York, together from 1968 to 1972. They managed to release a couple of 45s, local 45s in 1968. And it was Billy Batson on vocals, Teddy Speleos on lead guitar, David Vitek on guitar, Marty David on bass and sax, and then Chris Parker on drums. And an interesting lineup. I guess Teddy Speleos was quite the guitar player. And there's even accounts by Steven Van Zandt and Bruce Springsteen talking about going into the Village and checking him out just to marvel at his playing. And in fact, they rejected being managed by Bob Dylan's manager Albert Grossman and signed up with Michael Jeffrey, who just lost his main client Jimi Hendrix. And so a lot of people seem to compare Speleos to Jimi Hendrix, and in fact, Michael Jeffrey gave Speleos one of Jimi Hendrix's guitars, which is unfortunate because his entire guitar collection was stolen years later. But an interesting lineup. So you have those guys in the band. Chris Parker, the drummer, eventually ended up in Paul Butterfield's Better Days, and the rest of them just kind of dispersed into other occupations. Billy Batson was already a known singer-songwriter, so he was quite a catch for them to get as a singer. And when I listen to the record, a lot of times he doesn't impress me that much as a vocalist, but other times he does. And sometimes there's a little bit of a Mick Jagger quality to his vocals that's pretty cool. And he's the songwriter of all the material on the album, so they really needed a songwriter, and they got one with some history. Apparently, he was signed to Decca Records in 1966. And Speleos had quite a track record leading up to this band as well. He replaced Roy Buchanan, of course, the legendary guitar player, in a Washington D.C. band called the British Walkers. And then he ended up Speleos, John Hall, who ended up forming Orleans, the folk singer Barbara Keith, and drummer Andy Smart, who later ended up in Mountain, had a band in 1968 called Kangaroo, so 1968 to 1969, and put out one album on MGM. And I'll be doing a separate video on them. A really unusual record, and his guitar work is definitely pretty impressive. And so Holy Moses recorded their one album, got signed to RCA, recorded their one album in 1970, and it was released in 1971. And the band split pretty soon after that. I guess they were even by rock band standards, they were pretty unstable and had a lot of personnel clashes and everything, and they didn't really do much touring, so the record was doomed. And like I say, I saw it around for years and didn't really think that much of it, but I like it now. And needless to say, I'll post the link below to the album. Um, it's a mixed bag. I think the songwriting is pretty good. And one of the things that really struck me is songs like Rock City Road that sound exactly like the Stones, and the fact that Billy Batson sounds a little bit like Mick Jagger on some of his phrasing and his lower end really drives it home. So there's a lot of really kind of Stonesy kind of material on the record. And when I listened to it before, that wasn't what I was looking for, because RCA was signing up a lot of really cool hard rock bands around 70, 71, 72. And Holy Moses seemed like more of a straightforward classic rock band. But yeah, a lot of stuff that's really Stonesy. Speleos's guitar work throughout the record is really stunning. He's got a lot of great fills in there. Being such a great guitar player, you'd think the record would focus more in on his guitar playing, but it was definitely a some of its parts and a band that was a collective. and so they all kind of focused in on carrying off the songs. That said, there's one final song on the album that's about 8 minutes long, and we really get to hear Spalios whip out some pretty impressive guitar work. So I can see what everybody was talking about. I think a little bit more of that on the record would have gone a long way. But that said, now that I know more about Spalios, now that I know much more about Holy Moses and the pedigree behind the band, it's kind of amazing that a record like this is totally lost now when it really was a big deal when it came out. And so, for those of you who like classic, really straightforward classic American rock, Americana, with kind of a Stones feel and some really killer band. I mean, the rhythm section's really killer. Both guitar players are really good, and Billy Batson manages to achieve kind of a distinctive voice, and so I think it's pretty cool band. So it's not going to be for everybody. It's another one of those records where I think you really need to sit down, listen to the whole thing to really get a complete picture of what they're about, and for it to reveal its charms. But and a great band name too, Holy Moses. You really want it to be killer. And so now, after all these years, I really do feel like it's a pretty great record. Well worth checking out. Definitely worth having in your collection. And link posted below. Check them out. Holy Moses. Thanks for watching.